Hi, everyone, and welcome to WIST Presents How I Got into Sports Tech. I'm excited for you to join Stephanie Howard, Cheresse, Thornhill, and I. Typically, there are three of us in addition to our panelists, but sadly, I'm missing my other halves, Lid and Sid, today. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with WIST, Women in Sports Tech is a nonprofit created to drive growth opportunities for women at all stages of their careers throughout the sports tech and innovation landscape. Today's webinar, WIST Presents How I Got into Sports Tech, was created to provide a platform for discovery and discussion. Today, we are very excited to be discussing footwear innovation. Without a doubt, we think the coolest category of a sports tech career. If you have any questions for the panelists during the webinar, use the Q&A feature to submit your questions. We will get to the audience submitted questions, both those live submitted and in the sign-up form, so towards the end of the webinar. In addition, we will be sending out a post-webinar email to recap some of the points discussed later today or Friday morning, so don't worry if you miss something or forget to jot something down. With that taken care of, let's introduce Stephanie and Cheresse. Stephanie is one of the new WIST board members and is the founder and creative director of How and Why, an innovation and design consulting studio. With over 25 years of experience, including a design director role at Nike Incorporated, lead designer at New Balance, and innovation director at Seventh Generation, Stephanie formed How and Why in 2010. At Nike, she led the women's running footwear design initiative and later set the creative vision as design director of Nike and Bauer Hockey. Stephanie has designed over 100 products that have been in the market and has now worked with brands including Nike, Bauer, Reebok, New Balance, Converse, The North Face, Vans, Timberland, Titleist, Tracksmith, and Smartwool. In the sneaker world, she's most well known as the designer for the New Balance 850, which originally launched in 1996 and was re-released in 2019, becoming a new classic. We are very fortunate at WIST to have Stephanie as a board member and co-founder of our WIST Next Gen initiative, focused on middle and high school young women. By the way, tell your teenage girls in your life to check out WIST Next Gen content on our website. Cheresse is new to our WIST family and a WIST advisor. Welcome. She is an entrepreneur in her own right as a design director at S.E.E.D, School for Experiential Education and Design, a 2-year design program for women from diverse backgrounds, creating further access into the Adidas brand and sportswear industry. This group within the Adidas just launched at the beginning of the year, just before the pandemic shut down, just before the pandemic happened to the world. Prior to her experience at Adidas, Cheresse is a former Nike footwear designer with 12 years of professional design experience. She earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in industrial design from the College for Creative Studies in Detroit, Michigan, and a Master of Science in Instructional Design and Technology from Full Sail University in Winter Park, Florida. Wow, quite the track record. Thank you both for joining us here today. Alrighty, so to start, I have a question for both of you. Can you both share how you got into sports tech?
I learned about industrial design when I was in high school. And so that was sort of the avenue that I took to get into sports tech, was studying industrial design in college. But I had discovered it wasn't really a well-known major back when I was in high school. So I just knew that I was really good at math and science, but I loved art. And I was just very fortunate that one of my art teachers had explained what industrial design was to me, and I kind of fell in love with the idea. So I studied that at RIT, which is Rochester Institute of Technology. And out of school, started looking for jobs in Boston. And I thought I'd go into consulting because, I just wanted to have a variety of experience with all different types of products. And then learned of an opening at New Balance from a fellow alumni from my school. So just kind of started right out of school as a footwear designer at New Balance. and eventually moved to Reebok and Nike, and expanded sort of from footwear into sports equipment, and eventually a little bit of a wider variety of projects inside and outside the sports industry. But a lot of the work that I've done has been in footwear design.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think from my end, I kind of fell in love with sports and art around the same time as a kid. It's just like either you're inside and you're coloring books or you're outside, shooting or playing. For me, it's playing basketball. And I think there was a point in my life, probably in junior high, where I was more aware of sneakers. I think being part of sports and sneaker culture, just looking down at other kids' feet in elementary school, it was all about having like the latest Jordans. And that's when I became really aware of, wow, the shoes are really cool. And, I wanted to, have like the newest Nikes. Opportunity just wasn't there for me, but I fell in love with the design of it. And I used to collect S.E.E.D magazines. I don't know if anyone remembers those magazines from back in the day. They're still around, but they're free magazines and catalogs. And I kept them, and I was drawing all of the shoes that I saw in an S.E.E.D magazine. And I got into the magnet program in my junior high year in school, and discovered that, wow, I can actually become a footwear designer. So from the point of that being introduced into my life, I was on that path, and I followed it throughout high school and then into college. And had the rare opportunity to connect with a Nike recruiter in Detroit. She just happened to be there for the auto show, and hung around, got her business card, and was just emailing her back and forth. And I was able to land a internship at Nike, and then I was able to go back as a full-time designer. So I started off my career at Nike, and that was definitely my dream job. And I followed that path. I wanted to get back into teaching and mentoring a bit more, and then just landed at S.E.E.D this year, and we've launched this program. So it's been amazing thus far.
Awesome. You guys have both very interesting, unique paths to where you've landed here today. Cheresse, we're very interested in learning more about the S.E.E.D program at Adidas. Can you tell us a little bit more about the program, your startup experiences so far, and how young women can apply?
Absolutely. So you mentioned this earlier, but I'll say it again. So S.E.E.D is School for Experiential Education and Design. And my core team members and myself, really discovered that, there's not a lot of opportunities for people to even get into footwear, because the industry is so tight and so tight knit. And there aren't a lot of footwear designers, period. But if we dive deeper and we look at the demographics and the makeup of our industry, there aren't a lot of women in design. And, Stephanie can attest to this as well. And then if we go one, click further down, there just aren't a lot of women of color, much less Black women in footwear design. And so we discovered that need, and, erected School for Experiential Education and Design. So it's a 2-year program. Right now, we're focusing on women of color. And moving into next year, we're focusing on Black women, but it's a 2-year program. It's all instruction for the first year, and year 2, it's all internships. So everyone moves through this process, and there will be a full-time role at the end of the 2 years for the designers that finish and go through the program. But it's really a startup within a corporation, which is really interesting. And so we're able to structure our education exactly in the way in which we need it to be, so that our students are upskilled so they can move right into a full-time role. So we're really condensing that 4-year university experience into 2. And then they're also working on real products. So when you're in design school, it's usually ethereal projects that you craft yourself and you make up your own consumers. But here, our students are actually working on real products with real timelines and real financial goals. And so that's really our competitive advantage. They're going to be working on real products while they're learning. And at the end, they can say, hey, I actually had a hand in bringing this product to life. So it's pretty exciting. We're making a lot of waves in our industry, and then also in education as well.
Awesome. And how would you describe an ideal S.E.E.D candidate?
Well, our whole premise is like we want to remove a lot of the barriers that keep people from entering into traditional, educational programs in design. And so right now, our minimum, qualifications are: you must be 18 years old, you have to be able to work in the U.S., and you have to have a creative background. So that's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's good, because it's kind of like knocking down those barriers, like you said, so that everyone can have a chance and it's just stray from the tradition.
For sure, for sure.
Stephanie, what does your day to day look like running your own consulting business?
Well, definitely every day is different. Um, and sometimes there's some juggling involved.
Mhm.
But like this week, for instance, I have prototype review meetings with one of my long-term clients, and they're starting at 6 a.m. every day because it's a global meeting. So we're trying to, encompass all the different time zones. So I've been working all day, starting at 6, watching all these prototype reviews. But that's just this week. And so other weeks I'm doing, maybe strategy for a sports tech client, sometimes innovation workshops where I go into, back before COVID, I'll go into, the, speak to a team and a brand and run a few days with them of innovation workshops so that they can sort of start to uncover some insights and some ideas and actually build a roadmap for what their product innovation pipeline will look like. Sometimes I'm actually working on a, physical product design. So I'm sketching new product concepts or, creating a tech package for something to get built. But lots of different things. It's always a big mix because there's a few different types of projects involved. But I love the work. I mean, it's always, you know, great for me when I create a long-term relationship with a client because then it's sort of the best opportunity for me to leverage all that I've learned and still be part of a team. But it's every day is something new.
Yeah, and it also like opens up the aspect for you to challenge yourself because you've had this client for so long, so it brings out the opportunity to have new ideas and new things, which
Yeah,
is cool.
definitely.
How did your experiences at New Balance, Reebok, Nike, and Seventh Generation inspire you to create your own company?
Well, I think specifically my experience working at Nike and Seventh Generation, those two, for the most part, inspired me to create my own company. And mostly because they each were uniquely focused on sort of the extreme importance of insights and using those to drive strategy and design. And I got really excited about that when I saw how each of those companies were doing it differently, but still using this sort of idea of the power of insights. And so I felt like that deep thinking about human needs combined with understanding the social, cultural shifts that are happening, um, that sometimes other brands that I had worked with, like, they're not necessarily overlooking them, but maybe they were like underutilizing them. And so that's when I started How and Why. I thought maybe I could bridge the gap that I saw and guide some new thinking about the difference that design can make. And be kind of thoughtful and strategic and really kind of convince new folks to uh, to embrace that way of thinking. So it's just bigger. So I think design ultimately can be a lot bigger than just here's a brief, now create the product. And so that's what I hope to bring to other companies.
Yeah, of course. And Charisse, you own your own consulting business as well, No Shoes Creative LLC. How can you tell us a little bit more about your company's mission?
Sure. I think it's always interesting when you're building a consultancy. I think that's your opportunity to really form your brand, form your consultancy, and align it with your own beliefs. I think a lot of times when you work in a company, you have to sort of force yourself or align yourself to the company's vision. But the amazing part of having your own business is that your company is you. And
Mhm.
that's what I really want to do with my consultancy. So, Bill Bowerman had a quote that, if you have a body, you're an athlete. And then I believe if you have a brain, you're creative. And I think that a lot of people just don't feel like they're creative. They're like, oh, that's really cool. They see something that someone else creates and they think that that person is so creative, but they don't necessarily identify that creativity within themselves. And so that's what I really hope to provide to anyone that I work with within my consultancy, that I can help that person discover their own creativity and bring that to the forefront throughout. Whether it's a business idea or product that they have in mind, I really want to help people bring their own ideas to life versus creating my own products.
Mhm.
Also, now that I'm working within Adidas, it's the same thing. I bring that same sense of mission to the work that I do now, and with all of my counterparts that I work with and the students within our program, I had the same desire to help them bring their creativity to life. Yeah.
Awesome. And how do you balance being a business owner along with your full-time role at Adidas?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of what I said before. Like I may not be actively working within my consultancy right now, but I am the business when I walk into a room or I go into another Zoom meeting or a call. It's within me and I am the business still. So it's hard to balance both. And I would really like to focus. I'm just solely focused on seed, but I just want to let everyone know that, every moment and every touch point, it expresses your brand, so it's really important to define, your own brand or your business and who you are and make sure that you're living up to what you say you're going to do every opportunity that you have and every touch point you have with a collaborator or partner.
Nice. And I commend you both for having, your own companies and it thriving and being able to give something to people. It's such a good thing because people like me really look up to people like you. Um, for both of you, how do you two know each other? Stephanie mentioned that you met via Instagram. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the backstory.
Sure, I can tell that. It all started when I was profiled on an Instagram account which was called Sneakers by Women,
Mhm.
and that was started by this young woman named Julia Labase, and she created this site or account on Instagram to shine a light on women in the sneaker industry who often go unnoticed. And probably because there's also not a lot of us, but we're essentially it seemed like a really nice premise, and I thought that was great. So she had highlighted a story about me, and I thought I should use that recognition and create a post to highlight women I know in the industry and ask others to share women's names that they know. So I put a post out, and I figured this would be a great way for me to sort of get some get to see some designers who aren't constantly self-promoting, because Instagram is filled with lots of self-promotion, of course. And so, but I knew there were women out there doing a lot of great design work, and I probably didn't know them or what they were doing. And so Cheresse's name's popped up twice in the comments from two different women that I highly respect. And so I said, well, this is definitely one to follow. So I started following on Instagram. So it's a good story about how Instagram can help you meet other creatives. Uh, and but then I also, realized after seeing her background, like that she would be amazing to inspire the next generation of women in sports tech. And so we had just this summer, begun our thinking about with Next Gen, and we're starting to do the interviews, and I knew she would be really great. And so those interviews are, as I think Sydney mentioned earlier, geared towards middle and high school girls. And you should definitely check out her Cheresse's interview on wistnextgen.org, because it was awesome, and it wasn't just geared towards middle and high school girls. I think anybody could take the wisdom from that. It was really, really a great interview. But that's how we met. So, and I think we're learning that we have a lot of other things in common as well. We just missed each other at Nike, right? By like a month or something.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
And we had our first conversation yesterday. A virtual conversation on Zoom. So
the connections. Nice.
Yeah.
So we'll transition now into our speed round section. First thing, do you guys have any book recommendations for the audience?
So many. Stephanie, you can start.
Okay. Well, so it's not related to sports, but it's a design sort of as a whole concept. There was a book I read many years ago. It's called The Ice Palace That Melted Away. And it's old, so I don't know if it's one of these books I'm going to recommend, but they're hard to find. But it definitely had a profound effect on me, because it talked about design like technology can have a profoundly positive or a profoundly negative effect on our culture. And it brought the idea of civility in design and using that tool to build a more humane culture. And so it just absolutely resonated with me. And so I still remember it to this day. And it was just a short little book, and it was written by Bill Stumpf, who's the designer of the Herman Miller Aeron chair, the famous Aeron chair. I know he's since passed away, but it was just a great sort of reminder that you can go into design, and it's not just, a lot of people like to talk about design as aesthetics. And I think, I know Cheresse shares this with me, like, it can be so much more, and it can do so much more for society. And a quick other book I should recommend is Biomimicry, just because it's about sort of how nature designs everything. And, it does that in a way to create conditions conducive to life. And everything that nature creates, it uses natural energy, and it creates no waste. And so I think it's really nature showing us the building blocks for how to be better designers. And so I always recommend that. And if you don't have time to read the book, you can, they have a website, biomimicry.org, and there's plenty of resources out there that they're giving to kind of help people learn about that.
Yeah, those are awesome. I'm gonna check those out myself.
Yeah.
I have so many books about all types of different subjects of spirituality and how any book about sneakers I have and own, which I love. But one of my favorite books is called Mastery by Robert Greene. And every time someone asks me for a book recommendation, that's the one that I bring up, because it's so much about knowing yourself and the idea of mastery and how do you become a master at your craft and putting a plan together. So that's a great one for anyone in any walk of life, not just for design, but whatever subject matter you're interested in.
I'm definitely gonna check that out, because that's kind of like the field I'm in right now, just trying to like find myself and define what I want to do. I think of myself as creative, but
Right.
Putting things out there. Anyway, sorry, speed round.
Another great one is StrengthsFinders.
Okay.
StrengthsFinders assessment. It's by Clifton Strengths, and there's 34, and it puts it in order for you. It's super insightful. It's a assessment that anyone can take, but it really gives you better insights into yourself and what your strengths are.
Nice. I'm always here for a self-help book. So.
There you go.
You guys are both very creative, obviously. Favorite source of inspiration?
Cheresse, do you want to go first?
I'll go. I said books already, so I won't harp on that too much, but I think from a design and creative standpoint, the reason I love books is that there aren't any pictures, and it's words and thoughts. And I think that's really important when you're trying to create something new. You don't necessarily, having visual inspirations are great, but you want to consume words and ideas, because that's how you're going to foster new ideas, and then you can bring those to life visually. So I think that's what really helps me at least get to a new place. TED Talks are amazing. I love those. But other aspects too, just conversations with like-minded people. Like, again, Stephanie and I had a great conversation yesterday, and we discovered that there's so many things that we share in common from a thought process, and maybe collaborating can create something better than we could ever create on our own. So that's a great source of inspiration for me too.
Those are awesome. I was thinking about how, like, we always have to have a level of expertise on so many different things, from human behavior to performance, technologies, methods of manufacturing, visual, seasonal trends, things like that. So I end up, I think, for sources of inspiration, I don't have like one specific place. I end up reading a lot of newsletters, a lot of them, like technical newsletters on 3D printing or textile innovation. But then I'll read McKinsey reports on sort of like what's happening in the macro world of business. And then I'll go on Pinterest and kind of, check out something on Scandinavian design or something. Then I look at nature, because again, they're the best designers of all is Mother Nature. And so I feel like it's sort of like this never-ending faucet of information that I can be consuming, which and sometimes is inspirational, and sometimes can just be feel overwhelming, right? I feel like I want to know everything, but I try to just kind of balance that out. And I like what you just said about, like sometimes it's just really just a conversation with the right person, and that can make all the difference for inspiration as well.
Awesome. And then the last one is favorite pair of shoes. I'm sure this is the hardest one.
It is the hardest. I'm pretty sure I have over 200 pairs of shoes, and I've tried to whittle it down over the past few years. I know that the numbers are I tried to, I've given so many pairs of shoes away, but I have a few favorites, but I think what's exciting is like discovering my new favorites. And so right now I actually have my new favorite here. It's this one is Pharrell's Human Race basketball shoe. And I love that all of his shoes just always have, a saying that speaks to who he is. So this one says empathy. The other half says gratitude. So that's like my new favorite shoe. So that's the exciting part. New favorites always really excite me.
Nice.
I'll go with a classic then. So the original Nike Presto is always one of my favorites. It captured the essence of simplicity and minimalism, but it did it in a way that wasn't boring or generic. And at the time, it was kind of a breakthrough in terms of how it delivered this new ideal of comfort. I mean, technologies nowadays have sort of have done even better, but that was really it was a breakthrough for its time for a lot of different things. And so it's always just been one of my favorites. And I think it's timeless in its design. Like it still looks pretty fresh today. So yeah, Nike Presto.
Nice. Okay, so now we'll go over to the audience submitted questions through the registration form. One that we have is, how do you keep track of or organize your creative thoughts? What kind of tools do you use, and how do you go about bringing your ideas to life?
For me, I have so many notebooks and sketchbooks, and I know that it's sort of analog in a way, but I've kept like all my sketchbooks from like high school throughout my career in notebooks, because I think, when we have thoughts, you have to write them down. You can't let them escape. I also use the notes app in my phone a lot, and I have tons of notes in my notes app or voice recordings. So I think it's really about like using, whatever medium works best for you. But when you have a thought, make sure you capture and post-it notes or somewhere, because you don't want to lose it, because it could really spark something for you in the future.
Yeah. Nice. I'm a big fan of Evernote because I'm just doing so much research all the time. So I find I can tag information and organize it. There's a few people telling me I should try a couple new platforms for that, but right now I'm on Evernote, and I found it really helpful for me. I mean, I definitely have sketchbooks and notebooks, but I started noticing like if I type my meeting notes in Evernote, then I always know where they are.
Yeah.
For visual inspiration, sometimes Pinterest, if you're trying to sort of organize images and get yourself, on a path to like inspiring, something that you want to be inspired from, like it can kind of lead you to other things that you hadn't seen before. So I find that to be a nice kind of visual tool. But yeah, it's there's so I kind of have this analog visual, and then there's lots and lots of sketches, but I've never been as organized as I should be with all my sketchbooks. So they're there, but I haven't like sort of kept them in the best possible order. So that's my next job to do, I think.
This is a great call out. That's a rabbit hole though, for sure.
Yeah.
Lots of great things on Pinterest.
So how do you experience imposter syndrome? And if so, how do you deal with it? What advice do you recommend for building confidence?
I'd say for me, every now and again, I think earlier on in my career, definitely all the time. And I think the ways in which I combated that is just lots of positive self-talk. I think, we're the closest to ourselves, and you can never turn your mind or your brain off. So I think it's really training yourself to make sure that you're speaking positively to yourself, that you're becoming your own best friend, and always advocating for yourself. I think there's going to be enough people that speak negatively against you outside of yourself. Don't allow you to be the one that's speaking negatively to yourself. And I think also that a great thing to do is just make learning and self-mastery just a way of life. I think the more that you upskill yourself, the more comfortable you become with not knowing something and then going to find that information. I think that also helps your confidence. And then also honor your own voice. When you have a thought, just speak it. I think the more that we quench or stop ourselves from sharing, it diminishes our own confidence. So you have to honor yourself in the moment. When you have something to say it, and I think it'll become easier every time.
That's great. I would add to that, like, I think one of the ways to overcome any kind of feeling of imposter syndrome is to just always be on top of your game. So if you know what's coming at you at work, right, just be the most knowledgeable person in the room, because
Yeah.
you will witness there's some people, type of personalities out there that show a lot of confidence and have very little knowledge. And so you will always, get ahead if you're the most knowledgeable, the most hardworking person in the room. So I think that's a great way for you to kind of always, if there's something you don't know, then you don't need to necessarily kind of own up to that. You know it for the next time. And a good advice would also be to think beyond sort of the work that's being given to you right now. So if you're working at a company and you have project assignments, think what else the company might need beyond what they've given you as your assignment. And if you can work and learn what that is, you're getting on your a path to over delivering. And again, then you're just the expert, and you're competing to win. And one of the things I heard recently is that there were some women, I think it was a women in design conference, and some of them were talking about feeling like if there's only a few slots for women in that notice in the room, that they would feel like they were competing against the other woman in the room. And I think essentially everybody just needs to take that off the table. Like you're in there to do the best possible work you can for yourself and for whatever the project or project work that you're doing. And so it's really about over delivering and always knowing everything that you need to know for work.
Right.
Yeah, thank you for that advice. It's definitely always a work in progress. I'm 25 and I still feel that way, and I'm still working on it. Shameless plug, but I even just got the confidence to release my own blog that I did last week, blackgirlmaking.com. And yeah, it's just I'm in this identity fold where I'm just working it out and seeing where it goes, and that's all we can ever do. Someone asked, my degree is in theater design, so I have a background in lighting, set design, costume, and styling. How can I get involved?
Involved in theater design or within?
In
Okay,
footwear. Yeah.
within footwear. I'd say do as much research as you can on the fields. Jump on LinkedIn and connect with others who are in the field. If you want to become a footwear designer, I would say it's all about practicing and honing your craft, reading a lot of the books that we've already shared, and then also think about what's your unique point of view. What is intrinsic to you? What do you appreciate about footwear design? What are you really passionate about? If it's sustainability or if it's some other aspect, making sure that that's always at the forefront of your designs, and how can you make it something that's unique and different from what's on the market now?
Awesome. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I think Cheresse, you probably know, you're even closer with some of them than I am, but that there are programs out there that you don't have to necessarily start from scratch going, as a freshman in industrial design, but there's footwear training programs out there
Absolutely.
now as well,
Yeah.
like S.E.E.D, and
Right.
there's a few others too.
Yeah, there's Pencil Footwear Design Academy. It's in Portland. There's Yellow Brick, which is another great platform where you can learn about sneaker culture and footwear in particular. So there are way more resources available now, and on Instagram. Follow their footwear designers too.
Awesome. Well, there you go. You can start getting this, yep, through these suggestions and resources. So now we will go towards the live answered questions. Someone asked for a brand and new startup app. Once we've identified our target market and key objectives to describe the company, how should we approach turning those targets into colors, fonts, and other design concepts?
Branding. I love that question. I'd say know your competition. So I always like to, look at the other companies that are doing something similar or in the same space, and what are they doing? What's their branding? What makes them stand out? Then diving deeper into what do we want to stand for. I really kind of geek out on like all the psychology behind color, because there's, and if you Google it, there are meanings behind certain colors or certain associations with color. And it's really important to choose a color that you feel like aligns to your brand and what you stand for. And then with branding, Stephanie can speak to this, but I'd say less is more. Think about how simplistic and iconic you can make your mark.
Yeah, I agree. Like you talk about knowing who you are. I think like really telling a story, like start your visual brand language with what's your story and
Right.
why should anyone care. And sometimes when you think about it in that type of language, as you were talking about, like looking at the competition, but and then also look at things that are similar to your story but outside of that world that you're competing with, and that will help you kind of really create your own unique positioning, I think. It's that combination of like where do I stand in terms of like the landscape around me, and then what is your brand's story that's different, and then let that lead you. I think instead of just trying to kind of pick the trendiest thing going on, because color trends come in and out, so and you want yours to last a little bit longer than just like next year's trends.
Absolutely.
And then our next one, what's your personal philosophy, and has that changed with everything that's happened in 2020? Ooh, that's a good one.
My personal philosophy, it goes back to spirituality for me. I think at this point, I've come to a point in my life where I know that there's a plan and a purpose for my life, and I just need to be still and listen to that path and walk within that path. So for me, I'm over micromanaging my life, if that makes sense. I think sometimes, at least when I was younger, I had these boxes I wanted to check off, be married by 30, have kids by 35. You have these ideals in your mind as to what success looks like. And I went about my life and checking off these boxes. And I think, now at 35, I'm in a place where I don't have to have those boxes to equate to success. I think that there's a path already, laid out for my life. And I want to make sure that I'm aligned and in step, and I let it unfold versus trying to control it. So that's just my personal philosophy. And 2020 has confirmed it for me. We're not in control of any of this. And I think we have to be still and be in the moment. And I think the events of this year have been hard, but I think they've also created new opportunities, especially we're here on this call, and this, I think has been able to take off because of the situation that we're in, and we have more access to more people digitally. So I think there's always an opportunity, in the chaos or the hard moments. So.
I think that mine is related, a little bit related to the way I named my business with how and why. Like I'm always digging into the why of human behavior, and I suppose my philosophy is always just trying to dig deeper into why things are happening. So this year, with the political environment and the things that we are out of our control with health, I really am sort of deeply studying why human behavior is, and not making judgments. I'm kind of stopping making judgments, but like ultimately trying to dig it deeper into why humans do what they do, and so that I just think that that's where the insights come from. Like that's where, and we talk about the brand, and then you go take a step back, and there's a story, and the story comes from insights, and the insights come from sort of why there's even this need for that to exist. So I do a lot of thinking constantly about why something happens, and I think it's inspiring too to think that way, because again, trying to keep judgment out, you're always in a way trying to create solutions to some problems that might be existing that maybe could use some creative thinking to help.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We're coming up on our time now. Can we take a screenshot really quick?
Absolutely.
Alrighty. 1, 2, 3. Not sure if you heard that, but got him. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Just a reminder that we'll be sending out a post-webinar email either later today or tomorrow, so be on the lookout. Thank you again, Cheresse and Stephanie, for everything. This webinar is being recorded, so you can also go to our website and take a look at our previous webinars and our webinar archive, and please share it with your friends. The 2021 WIST Fellowship applications open December 15th. Visit our website at womeninsportstech.org to learn more, and make sure to sign up to join our community. Mary Lou, our founder, will be leading info sessions with college students and graduate students who are interested in these $5,000 grants to fund summer internship programs in the sports tech business, starting with one this Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. So follow us on social media as well, and keep up with all of our WIST work and WIST Next Gen initiatives. Thank you again so much, Stephanie and Cheresse. It was awesome to have you and hear your insights.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.